Hey everybody, welcome back to the Overwatch League report. I'm Brian.
I'm Ben.
Ben, before we get the show started, I just want to have a moment of silence for the 100-year anniversary of the Boston molasses flood. It's killed 21 people. And being from Boston, I think it's important for us to acknowledge. The question is, what does this have to do with Overwatch?
I mean...
So nothing. I just thought it was an interesting thing that popped up on Reddit before I started recording. Ben, how are you today?
I'm doing good. Ready to talk about the Dallas Fuel.
Yes, I'm pretty excited. As you see, I got blue on. I got blue in the back. That's you got blue on.
Yeah, got blue.
And the team color is actually green. No, it's just, they are.
No, it's burn blue. Burn blue, Brian.
Yeah, I think like all the Dallas teams are blue. That's like their thing. So the Fuel, no different. And much like some Dallas teams, they're near the bottom of the league.
Yeah, at least they were last season. Yeah, unfortunately.
But perhaps season 2 will be a little bit different. Ben, let's start off with the coaches. First coach is Arrow. He was a Fusion University coach, and he joined in May of 2018. He also, very importantly, was the Team USA head coach for the 2018 World Cup. What does he bring to the table?
He brings actual cohesive coaching and good management skills, and you can just take a look at Dallas Fuel's record last season and see. I think it was 3-7 stage 1, 2-8 stage 2, 1-9 stage 3, and then stage 4 after they brought Arrow in. They got to the stage 4 playoffs. They had a 6-4 record. They had a really strong map record.
Right.
They lost to the NYXL in the stage 4 playoffs. So you can see just based off of those results alone what bringing in Arrow and like revamping the team a little bit and getting this new coaching staff in, particularly Arrow, really just brought the team to the next level.
Yeah, I mean, well, they were consistent at first. So
yeah, well, they were consistently getting worse.
So yeah, this is kind of exciting. Next up on the coaching roster is Jane. Joined in July of 2018 and also was Team Canada's coach in the Overwatch World Cup.
Yes, a big deal because Canada ended up in third place behind Korea in first and China in second in the Overwatch World Cup last year. So he did a very good job of coaching that team. And Jane is a very, very well-known content creator, streamer, community voice from the Overwatch community. He's very well respected. He's very well esteemed. And on top of that, he has the coaching experience. He coached before. He coached Tainted Minds, which is an AU, an Australian team from Contenders. And then he was tapped for Overwatch World Cup to play to coach the Canadian team. He coached them to a third place finish. And now he's bringing his expertise, his knowledge, his community drive to the Dallas Fuel. And they greatly need this kind of energy in their coaching staff. Somebody who is like well respected, somebody who's known to make good decisions, and is like has a good head in the shoulder. I think that Jane is a very good addition to the team.
Yeah, and so obviously interesting to North American head coaches for the World Cup. It will be interesting to see how that works together. We talked a little bit about the coaches. Let's talk a little bit about the players they'll be coaching, starting off with Tae Moo. He is a Finnish player, and he played for the World Cup team and joined in October of 2017. He is a DPS player in mains Widowmaker, McCree, Roadhog, Soldier 76, and Sombra.
Yeah, so Tae Moo is one of the original players from the team. Most of this existing roster is still carried over. There are only 3 brand new players to the team coming into the roster, at least so far. There's rumors, and Tae Moo is a pretty incredibly versatile DPS player, and you're going to hear me say that a lot with this team. Talk about versatile DPS players. And he was so versatile that when AKM was brought in, he actually flexed the tank a little bit I think that the Tae Moo kind of gets overlooked a little bit when people look at this roster. He is very successful. He's got a very broad range. You mentioned that you mentioned like 5 different heroes or something that he's good on. He's particularly good on. I think McCree is generally the one that he played the most. But interesting to notice, last season, a hero that he played a little bit that didn't really see a ton of play last season in general was a guy called Reaper. And as we may or may not know, so there might be a little bit of a change happening to to Reaper coming up that might make him a little bit strong.
Yeah, no, I've seen him referred to as the tank buster moving forward. So Reaper got a huge buff, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but like you said, a lot of players on this team are DPS, so perhaps they're in a decent spot to be successful with the new meta rolling out. Until something else changes, and then we upload this and someone calls us out in the comments about it, and we have to be like, no, this is recorded before that. But for now.
Yeah, I mean, they were maybe anticipating a shift where they signed a bunch of DPS players, mostly hit-scan DPS players. A lot of what this team is going to be trying to do is replacing Siegel, who was like a star player from their team last season, who retired at the end of last season. So it kind of left like a little bit of a hole in their team that they've been trying to fill and put back together. But yeah, I think that Tae Moo is a very strong player. He's very underrated, I think, by a lot of fans. And he has experience on Reaper. And if there is like a Reaper meta where there's some kind of like DPS core that's built around supporting Reaper and making sure that no teams can actually play any kind of tanks, then then Tae Moo can fill that role, and it's not a role that's very like commonly filled on teams because it's not really a role that's been needed before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's definitely gonna be interesting seeing a little bit like, oh God, how do we cover this when we don't know exactly what's going to be, playing out? But we got to do it, Ben. So let's move on to Effect. South Korean DPS player maining Tracer, Soldier 76, McCree, Widowmaker, and Doomfist.
Yeah, I remember when I said that this team was a lot of very versatile DPS players.
This is going to be a trend.
Yeah, Effect is another one of those players. Effect actually was a strong player who stepped away for personal reasons from the team during ahead of stage 4 last year, so he didn't really get to play with the team in their like heyday of performance.
Yeah, he's like, oh wait, we're good now.
Yeah, he's coming back for season 2. So he stepped away for some personal reasons, some like mental health issues, some like stress issues from like working himself too hard. He actually recently came out as bi, and I feel like a lot of the pressure from last season might be related to like him feeling, like societal pressure from coming from Korea, and it's not less progressive than in some Western countries in terms of that. So it seems like he's in a better spot now mentally. And he is an incredibly strong player. He's particularly impressive on Tracer. And so if Tracer comes back into the meta, you can expect him to be a force. The issue with the Dallas Fuel that we're going to talk about going through, like I mentioned, is that they do have a lot of overload in this position of like really strong hit scan DPS players. So figuring out what players are going to want to actually put into this role in the starting position is going to be the real trick. So, but Effect is good enough on a couple of heroes like Tracer and Widow and Doomfist where you could see some play.
Cool. All right, so let's move on to Mickey. He's a Thai player. He is Flex and plays Brigida, Deva, Roadhog, and Zarya.
Yeah, so towards the end of the season during Stage 4 when they were popping off a little bit, and that was the start of like the Brigida meta, of the Goats meta. He became known pretty well known as a very strong Brigida player. And I know that the Brigida is kind of, crapped on a little bit as like a basic bitch hero that doesn't really like require a ton of intense skill. But
we didn't say that
I'm saying that people say that.
Yeah. Someone said it. Not
go
us,
after them. Yeah.
But drag them on Twitter.
Go find them and drag them. Yeah. But yeah, Mickey is pretty well known as a very strong Brigida player. The issue now is if Brigida is like rotating out of the meta,
Right.
where exactly does he fit in? Particularly with RCK coming in as kind of like a potential like star Deva player. Like you don't really need Mickey in that Diva role. Maybe, like I mentioned in previous videos, I could see Roadhog being a strong hero coming in with the way the meta might be shaping out. So maybe he'll fit into that role. But unfortunately, I think that we might be seeing a situation where Mickey doesn't end up seeing as much starting time as he did last year.
Right. It'll be interesting to follow for sure. So moving on to the next player is Harry Hook, Spanish player, support. He plays Lucio, Mercy, Ana, Soldier 76, and McCree.
Yeah, so I'd say that Harry Hook is he's like a decent support player. So after the AKM pickup, I'd say like 5 out of the 6 starters on the Dallas Fuel were like above average in their role at the very least. And I think that Harry Hook was probably the 6th player in that roster. And I'm not saying that he's bad, but he just didn't seem particularly up to scratch with the rest of the team. He is a pretty strong Mercy player, but Mercy has not seen as much play coming in as Lucio has recently, so it's kind of tricky where he's going to fill in there. And then also with the pickup of Closer, who in my opinion is possibly a top 5 healer in the league, it seems very unlikely that he's going to be seeing starting time over Closer. So that's kind of where we are with Harry Hook. I think that it's likely that he'll come in every once in a while for certain positions based off of like whether I think that Lucio is probably still going to be the main healing hero, but if Mercy comes back in, maybe they bring Harry Hook in on certain maps, but I think that Closer is still probably better on both heroes. So
right, fair enough. So let's go to AKM, as you just mentioned. He joined in February of 2018, so a little bit after the beginning of last year's season. He plays DPS, Soldier 76, McCree, Pharah, Widowmaker, and Genji.
Yes, so again, another very versatile, primarily hit-scan DPS player.
They were really banking on goats not being a thing, it seems.
Yeah. Very, very lucky with the balance pouch coming in.
Yeah.
But so AKM is, I would say, I'd hazard to say that he's like possibly the star of the team, in my opinion, with Seagull leaving now. He is one of the best European DPS players, and he's best known for his play on Soldier 76, where he kind of revolutionized the play style of that hero. He plays a lot more aggressively. He can kind of get into your face and just kind of like burst you down when usually Soldier 76 is played more like as like a backline hero.
Right.
But he can play kind of like both play styles, so he's very versatile. And on top of that, he's also an incredibly strong Pharah player. He is pretty much the only strong Pharah player on this team, and with in my opinion, it being very likely that Pharah sees play in the meta, I think that he might end up filling that role. Again, like I mentioned, the team has 4 very strong, or like at least above average, hit scan DPS players. So some of them are going to have to fill roles on projectile heroes. I think that AKM has the skills to be able to do that, particularly on Pharah, and then maybe on Genji a little bit.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about OGE, who is a South Korean tank player and mains Winston, Reinhardt, and Orisa.
Yeah, I think that OGE is, again, another player that is underrated. I think a lot of the Fuel players, because of the way the team performed, are underrated by a lot of people because, like, the issue with the team, in my opinion, was not the players for the most part. There are a couple of exceptions, but I think that for the most part, the issue was cohesion and coaching.
Right.
And so when you have an above-average team being coached into a corner and not really like given the opportunity to like shine, then obviously they're going to look worse than they are.
Right.
I think that is a lot of the case with OGE. He's especially strong on Winston. You can see a lot of highlight clips of him just like totally tearing apart enemy teams. He is an incredibly mobile Winston player, which is a very hard thing to do, especially like when you're in like filling in that main tank role in a lot of compositions. It's very hard to be mobile because you kind of have to stay with your team in a lot of cases, stay with your healer. But he has the ability to really jump around the map, get into the middle of like a team setup, and just tear apart the enemy team one by one. I'm really excited to see what he does in Season 2. I'm worried again, like I mentioned with previous teams, that the main tank role is going to be kind of watered down because of the changes, but we'll see. We'll see exactly kind of what position he's going to fill.
So let's go to Unco, who is a French player. He played for the LA Valiant. He's support. He mains Zenyatta, Ana, and Moira.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, he started Season 1 on the Valiant, and then he was traded mid-season to Fuel. I think that, like the other players in the team, like I mentioned, he's very underrated. I think that he's one of the best EU Zenyatta players there is, just like in total. He's probably top 3 to 5 just EU Zenyatta players. I think that he has a lot of experience on that hero. And as long as Zenyatta keeps seeing play, he's going to keep on being a starter. He came onto the team, I believe, around the same time that they picked up AKM. And it's funny because both of them had previously played during the Apex time on Rogue, which was like basically the only non-Asian team to like hang with the Koreans, right, in Apex. And so that kind of shows like the level of skill that these players were at back in 2017 or whenever. And so he has that existing synergy with AKM that has been shown in last season a little bit. And yeah, I think that he's a very strong player. He's definitely going to see starting time because he's really the only support player who can play Zenyatta. And like, there are other ones who can play Ana, but not to his level. I think that he's definitely going to be a backbone player on this team, just like he has last season.
All right, so let's move on to Closer, South Korean player, formerly of the London Spitfire. He plays support, Mercy, Lucio, and Ana.
Yes, this is the first player we're talking about who is coming in brand new to Season 2 on the Dallas Fuel. And like you mentioned, he was a player for a team called the London Spitfire. You may have heard of.
Maybe you heard of them, you know.
Yeah.
No
and he actually started for a bit on the London Spitfire. After a certain point, he kind of got swapped out for Nuss. Who ended up playing for most of the end of the season and then into the playoffs. And the reason isn't necessarily because Nuss was a better player than him. I think that they're about equal, or like they're at least comparable in terms of skill level, especially as a Mercier. And I think that the Closer can bring a lot to this team. the reason that Nuss was seeing play over him was because, from my understanding, he was a much better shot caller, and they needed that kind of like leadership role on the Spitfire to kind of actually bring them out of the funk that they were kind of in mid-season.
Yeah. You can't really question any of their moves at this point.
Oh, for sure, yeah. Like, it was definitely the right call, but the call was not made because Closer is a bad player. Closer is, like I mentioned earlier, I think he's a top 5 or so healer in the league. And he was benched, right, on the London Spitfire. So that shows you how good the Spitfire works.
Yeah, I mean, we said before we were there, we got to bear witness to the utter dominance of that team. So let's move on to RCK, Finnish player, Flex, when he mains Deva, Zarya, and Genji. Tell me about him, Ben.
Yeah, so the hero that people associate with RCK, when you say RCK's name, you think Deva.
Okay.
And unfortunately for RCK, Deva is not in a good spot right now, despite being in a good spot for the last year and a half.
Right. I think there are times where talkers like, whoa, this person will be good as Deva because Deva's been in every meta.
Yeah.
Now it's like, ooh, yikes.
I will see. Maybe even with the changes, Deva is still good enough. But we'll see.
Right.
But yeah, RCK is a star Deva player, possibly the best Deva out of EU. I think that Poco is probably better, but possibly at least one of the best Deva players coming out of EU. And maybe Deva stays in the meta. Even if Deva doesn't stay in the meta, RCK he's able to play other heroes. Like he's known for being a Deva player, but he has experience with other heroes. And one of those heroes is Genji. And the main issue with this team right now is that they don't have a really strong projectile DPS player. Right. And so if they can get players like AKM and RCK to fill in those roles, to fill in on Pharah and on Genji, and on these like really core projectile heroes, that I think that this team can be like a really strong contender. So that's kind of going to be the question for RCK is, first of all, is Deva still in the meta? If Deva's still in the meta, then he's going to be a star. If Deva's not still in the meta, it's whether or not he can fill a role that the team needs on heroes like Genji.
So let's close this roster out with the American Zachary from Fusion University. He's a DPS player, plays Sombra, Tracer, Genji, McCree, and Widowmaker. What can Zachary bring to the professional level?
Zachary can bring a fourth, really strong, really versatile hit scan DPS presence.
This team has everything.
If everything is Widowmaker and Sombra.
Exactly.
Yeah. This team can.
It's a new meta.
This team is gonna. Sombra. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, Zachary is a great player. Zachary is getting a lot of crap right now online. Well, not as much right now, but he was after the Overwatch World Cup.
Okay.
He was getting a lot of crap online because he was one of the main players from the US team who was taking the brunt of the blame for their loss in the UK match. Gotcha. I personally think that is pretty unfair. I mean, as you mentioned, he was on Fusion University, which is the best NA contenders team by far. Like it's like Fusion University, and then like Big Gap, and then like whatever team just happens to be second to that at that point. Like it's
whatever team gets to lose to them.
Right. It's Fusion University, Big Gap, and then the first losers. Like the Fusion University, I'm trying to think if they lost a match. I think they lost one match across 3 seasons of contenders. So yeah, that's where Zachary's coming from, and Zachary was a big reason for why they were so good in seasons 1 and 2. And I think that the reason that he gets a lot of crap for the Overwatch World Cup performance was because there were a couple of clips from, I believe, a stream that, ironically enough, Seagull did, where he broke down that match, and then like that was taken out of context and spread across Reddit and everything.
Right.
And it turned into everything is Zachary's fault when it was like one out of context,
out of control.
Yeah,
that's the internet.
The main issue that the US team faced in that match was cohesion, like teamwork, communication, having like a solid coaching strategy going in. It didn't seem like there was a plan, and I don't think it had as much to do with the individual performances. And so I don't really think it's fair for people to put a bulk of the blame on Zachary.
Right.
When
from what you're saying, it just sounds like they're missing the little things.
Yeah,
like a plan and cohesion.
They're not so important. But
right? No. Who needs those?
Right, but I mean, like obviously it's a big deal, but it's not like an individual player's fault that the team was not working well together, right?
Right. Yeah. Of course.
Like, and Zachary has proved himself for like the entirety, like 2018. If you look at NA contenders, like Zachary is like one of the like top 5 players, right? So it's pretty ridiculous, in my opinion, for like him to be taking so much bread.
Right.
And
I'm calling you out, Reddit, right here.
Yeah. I would like to remind people that when there were when the Fuel was teasing that they were going to be doing a pickup, a little person called me predicted that they were going to pick up Zachary, despite the fact that it made no sense.
So, what do you guys have to say to that?
Yeah. So that's my little like clout moment there. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean that gives you legitimacy to all the claims that you make on this show. Like that one time, I knew Zachary was going to be there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of people who thought it might be Zachary, so that's not But yeah, so
no,
Zachary,
it was just you.
it was all me.
Right.
But yeah, so this is Zachary's first opportunity to join Overwatch League. He actually isn't even 18 yet. He turns 18 next week. And that's like the age limit. You have to be 18 before the season starts. So this is like the first opportunity he has to even play. In my opinion, he probably would have been signed last year if he was 18. So I think that he's a good pickup. The question is whether he's a good pickup for the Fuel, right?
Right.
Because the Fuel, like I said, are already overloaded with a lot of DPS, a lot of specifically hit scan DPS with a lot of overlap in specific hero talent. So we'll see.
That we shall. Ben, where can they find you online?
You can find me on Twitter and on most sites at Ben Sharon, and otherwise you can find me on Twitch at Trey of Spades. Pretty much if it's a generic social media platform, I'm at Ben Sharon, and if it's like a gaming specific platform, it's at Trey of Spades. So.
Fair enough. So you can find the channel on Twitter at WG Everything, on Instagram at WickedEverything. Of course, we're right here on YouTube where you're watching this. Hit the subscribe button, turn notifications on, and let us know what you're thinking of the show in the comments below. We love the conversation and reply to every comment. One day that will maybe be unattainable, but for now, we can reply to every comment. And you can find me on Twitter at @theFakeBmar. That's MARR. And I think if you do follow us, we'll probably be tweeting about the Overwatch League and Celebrity Big Brother for the next few weeks. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. You can catch streams from Jenny, Ben, and Starry on YouTube and on Twitch at twitch.tv/wickedgoodeverything. Thanks for watching, everybody.